and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at Book 5 of Piano Adventures by Nancy and Randall Faber. So as always, you can find these Piano Adventures books at your local music bookstore or online, and you definitely got to pick up this book in order to follow with today's lesson. So we're going to open up Lesson Book 5 to page 14, and the piece that we're looking at today is called the Rolling River Etude. So the Rolling River Etude is a piece that uses the grand cadence, which is on the bottom of the page. The grand cadence in the key of E major. So before we delve into the topic for today, which is the grand cadence and how it works for a piece of music, I'm going to play the Rolling River Etude so you can get a feel for how it sounds. After I play it, we'll talk more about how the piece works. So here we go. So that's our Rolling River Etude. It's just short and sweet. So now a little bit about the grand cadence. So the grand cadence, I'm not going to go into too much discussion of it right now, but it is explained elsewhere in the book and in the theory book. But for now, let's just memorize this cadence as it says. That's right here in the bottom of the page, in the bottom of page 14. So the grand cadence is defined as being a sequence of chords. The chords are the 1, 4, 1, 5, 1 chords. And just to review what a cadence in general is, a cadence is the resting point in your piece of music. It's a place where the chords bring you to a finishing point of a phrase. It usually lines up with the finishing of a melodic phrase as well. So we'll start out first by playing this grand cadence on the bottom of the page. So again, we're in E major, so your 1 chord is going to be E, G sharp, and B. 4 chord, E, A, C sharp. 1 chord again, that was E, G sharp, B. 5 chord is D sharp, F sharp, B. And 1 chord, E, G sharp, B. So here we go all over again. 1 chord, 4 chord, E, A, C sharp, back to 1 chord, and finishing with 5 chord, and back to 1 chord. So this sequence of starting with your 1 chord, your tonic E major chord, and then following it up with your 4 chord and your 5 chord, and then finishing with returning to your home tonic chord, E major. Again, that's your grand cadence. Now in this particular piece, the Rolling River Etude, the cadence works a little bit differently. So the cadence that we just looked at right now, it minimizes your hands jumping around. So if you're playing that cadence on the bottom, you'll see that it just moves a couple fingers at a time, but in general your hand pretty much stays right here in the same place on the piano. Now the Rolling River Etude has a different kind of a style, and this piece is a great example of how a cadence can play out in a different way depending on how the composer applies the cadence. So again, we're still using these chords, but they're going to be in a different form or a different inversion. They're actually going to be in root position. So to look at the root position chords, we're going to look at the top of page 14. So here we have root position E, G sharp, B. Root position 4 chord this time is going to start with an A on the bottom, A, C sharp, E. And root position 5 chord starts with a B on the bottom, B, D sharp, F sharp. And then just back to the tonic chord, E, G sharp, B. So let's play these and say them. We're looking at the progression on the top of the page now. So tonic chord, 1, and E major. 4 chord, it's going to be subdominant, A, C sharp, E, and dominant chord, 5, B, D sharp, and F sharp. So again, 1 chord, 4 chord, and 5 chord. Now what do I mean when I say that these are in root position? When I say that a chord is in root position, what I mean is that the layout is every other letter. So again, root position means every other letter form. For example, E, skip past F to G sharp, skip past A to B. Don't forget that we have to play G sharp because in the key signature we have 4 sharps to be aware of. Alright, so now we're going to look at the etude. The etude uses the exact same 1, 4, and 5 root position chords that we just played right now. So right here it says to write the chord names in. We're going to just do a quick exercise on how to label these chords. Ready? So let's look at the very first bar and just figure out what notes are present in that first bar. Alright, first bar. So we have an E, a B, an E, an F sharp, and a G. Alright, well E, that's not present in your 4 or your 5 chords, so you're rolling those out as contenders, as a match, right? So you have an E, that would go with your tonic chord. Next, we had a B, that also goes with your tonic chord. Another E also fits in. F sharp, it doesn't quite fit, but we'll talk about that in a second. And there's a G sharp. So in bar 1, pretty much all of the notes, except for 1, fit into the 1 chord. And that means that the 1 chord is your label for bar 1. Now, I did say that there is 1 note that doesn't fit in with the chord. So just to refresh your memory, first note fits, second note fits, third note fits, and then we hit this 4th note, which is an F sharp, and it doesn't quite fit in. However, the composer chose to insert what we call a passing tone. So a passing tone is just a note that doesn't quite match with the chord, but it smoothly leads you from one chord tone to another chord tone. So here would be with all the chord tones. These are all parts of the same chord, E major, and here's with the passing tone. So you hear how they sound almost identical, but that F sharp just adds a little touch of color. So your chord for the first 2 bars is this 1 chord, but just with a nice spaced out realization on the keyboard. It's going to sound like this for the first 2 bars. Okay, looking at bars 3 and 4, take a moment to just apply that same logic, looking at bar 3, and label all of your notes that are in bar 3 and try to figure out which one's going to be the best match. Is it going to be a 1 chord, or a 4 chord, or a 5 chord? So think about that for a second. You can even just pause your video while you try to figure out what goes into that box in bar 3. And now, here's the answer. It is a 4 chord. This is what we expect because the grand cadence, again, has this particular order. It's a 1 chord, then a 4 chord, and then a 5 chord. So in bar 3, we're having a 4 chord, again with a little passing tone. Okay, now we're in bar 5. Bars 5 and 6 use the 5 chord. And then the last 2 bars round out our cadence by taking it home back to tonic E major 1 chord. So in this lesson, we figured out how a composer can take 3 very simple chords, a 1 chord, a 4 chord, and a 5 chord, and by putting them in that order, can make an entire piece out of those 3 chords. Here we have 3 simple chords, and then ending with the 1 chord, 1, 4, 5, 1, that created an entire page of music. So how did he create an entire page of music? Well, again, it's through the use of some passing tones and through the way that the composer spaced out the chords so that your hands are moving around on the keyboard. It gives it some creativity as opposed to just this. So now to round it off, since we've talked about what the cadence is, leading you to a resting point in the music, we talked about the grand cadence, which is the specific sequence 1, 4, 5, and 1, and then we talked about how in this one, he uses 2 bars of 1, 2 bars of 4, 2 bars of 5, and 2 bars of 1. So now that you learn all those things, you're better equipped to understand how this piece is put together and also how to practice it. So without further ado, here's the rolling river etude one last time. Thanks again for joining and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.